Well, hello, this is Pastor Thomas Gross of Living Faith Christian Fellowship. And I want to share with you today about Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to share the truth. The truth is very, very, very important. And in a society that is not godly, it's going to prevail. Not the truth, but lies. Simply because, the enemy, that is the devil, he's out to bring division. He is out to bring discord. He is out to keep people from coming together. And that's his job. Everybody points to a particular individual and they say he's divisive. No, you know who's really divisive? The devil. He's the one who is divisive, and he is the one who creates the problems. Now, so before I go any further into this particular program, I want to, and I always do this, I do this for a reason. This disclaimer is very important because I'm sharing video. So copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, editorial opinions, and research. No harm, incitement to violence, hatred, or infringement is intended in the use of any material used in this program or by anything said here. The sole purpose of this program is to use events and occurrences from everyday events to reveal truth. I stopped there. I paused there. To reveal truth and compare them with to what I understand God has revealed in the scriptures, which are also called the Bible and the Word of God. The opinions expressed here are my own and not necessarily the opinions of the providers of this medium. So that said, let's get into it. Now, there are some things that I want you to understand where Charlie Kirk is concerned, and because I'm concerned about all the lies and all the untruths that are spreading. One of the lies and the untruth spreading rapidly is that Charlie was racist, that he was a white supremacist. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, the people who say that didn't watch him and they didn't listen to him. Because if they watched him and listened to him, they would not say that. There are other people out there who are reporters, and they did watch him and listen to him. And so what they did was the things that you really are not supposed to do when you are reporting events. You see, and it leads to some bad conclusions. I'm going to show you three things that lead to bad understanding and misinformation. All right, the first one is deliberate distortion. And this is what those reporters do. When they hear someone, they will deliberately distort his words so that it can make it sound as if he said something he did not say. All right. The second thing is out of context statements. You can actually, for example, take a video and he may have said, that there may be a string of 5 words in a sentence. And you can cut out everything he said before that and everything he said after those 5 words. See, cut out all that he said before the 5 words and cut out all that he said after the 5 words to make it appear that he said something that he didn't say. Now, he did say those words, but out of context, you get a different perspective. And the third thing, of course, that's on the listener. Bad inferences. You see, the listener infers. The listener hears and then infers. The listener comes to certain conclusions. And you know what? People with bad understanding, people with little education, people who don't understand words, or people who are listening to other people who are deliberately distorting somebody's words or taking that person's words out of context, the listener can come to the wrong conclusion. That's what an inference is. See, just in short, the listener comes to the wrong conclusion. That's what the devil likes. As a matter of fact, since I'm talking about, devilish things, let's look at something that Jesus said before we move on further into this particular topic here. This is what Jesus said. When he was speaking to a bunch of Pharisees, he said, "You are of your father, the devil, and you want," listen carefully, you want, boy, this is what you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning. Let's see, wasn't Charlie Kirk murdered? So whoever murdered him did that. They wanted to do that. And that's what the devil wanted. The devil wants murder. So he wanted to do the desire of his father. And see, so he was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth. There is no truth in him. We're talking about the devil. There is no truth in him. And Jesus was talking to religious people, by the way, a group of religious Pharisees. All right? Just because a person is religious doesn't mean that he's right. That's what you have to understand. And this is what he said. Whenever he speaks, talking about Satan still, whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he, the devil, is a liar and the father of lies. You've got to be careful then, as an individual, that you're not spreading lies. You see, because if you spread lies, then you are spreading what the devil wants you to spread. And by the way, since we're talking about lies, let's talk about truth as well. Jesus said, speaking to one of his disciples, he said, "I am the way, the truth." Did you hear what Jesus said? He is what? The truth. Satan is a liar and the father of lies. Jesus is the truth. So when you hear truth, Jesus stands behind truth. When you hear a lie, Satan fathered it. Do you understand? When you hear the truth, Jesus is all for it and all with it. When you hear a lie, the devil is promoting it. All right? That's what I want you to understand. And then he went on to say, "No one comes to the Father but through me," which is another subject entirely, because that means that Jesus has excluded all paths to God, or any other path that someone thinks is a path to God. Jesus has excluded all those ways, because he said he is the only way to the Father, the only way to God. And the only way you can get to God is through truth. And you know what? If you are promoting and spreading lies, be careful. That's all I got to say is be careful. Now, that said, I want to share with you the truth where Charlie Kirk was concerned. One of the things that people say, Charlie Kirk was a racist because he didn't like Juneteenth. He was against Juneteenth. Really? Okay, let's listen in context just to one of his statements about Juneteenth. And then let's see whether Charlie Kirk is against Juneteenth or not. Perhaps he's against something else. And number one, people who don't follow him will not have seen it, okay, because they don't follow him. Let's look at this and see what's going on here.
Some of you will be listening to this episode as it airs on Juneteenth. The heck is Juneteenth? It depends who you ask, okay? But let's talk about what it actually is. And we opposed Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday as it happened.
All right, now you heard him. We opposed Juneteenth as a federal holiday as it happened. I want you to catch that. So this is where, now, if you didn't watch the rest of this video, what would you hear? You would hear he opposed Juneteenth. That's what you would hear. See, so if they cut all, if all they did was cut this and showed you this, this is what you would hear. Let's continue to listen to him, however.
And yes, it is the day that it is mandatory to work at Turning Point USA. We're going to talk about it actually on the day. I say we're given multiple days off for our actual Independence Day, July 4th, 1776. Why is Juneteenth a problem? Not because, again, it's so subversive. On its face value, I have no problem with it.
Did you hear that? On its face value, I have no problem with it. Let's continue.
I think it's wonderful to say, okay, liberation of slaves, all that good stuff. No. The issue is that the entire point of it, as per postmodernists do and deconstructionists, is to subvert July 4th.
That's his problem with it. They're trying to replace July 4th, get rid of July 4th. There are individuals who are intent on tearing down the country structure as it is in order to develop a different kind of culture. See, because they do not like America as it is. That's the problem that he has with it. Doesn't like the freedoms. Because, see, you have to understand, there's a group of people who want power. See, and to get this power, they have to deconstruct America, you see, and make America, instead of a free nation as it is, a socialist or communist nation. That's what they're trying to do. But let's keep going. See, now that's something that you may not know of. But see, I'm not getting into that. That's another subject. But this is one of the reasons why they are trying to remove or replace or supplant July 4th. Let's keep going.
That has always been the agenda. That there is a Black Independence Day and a National Independence Day. The same way that they have a black national anthem that plays before NFL games. That they have black-only dormitories and black-only math classes. It is a neo-segregationist federal holiday.
Did you hear that? Neo-segregationist. New segregation. What did we fight hard to get rid of in the 50s and the 60s? Segregation. What are they trying to restore? Segregation. If we are segregated, we are no longer the United States of America. That's the problem. Neo-segregationism. And that's what we want to stop. Else, we're going to make George Wallace right. Remember George Wallace? Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. We want to make him correct? Come on. And by the way, he was a Democrat. Let's keep moving.
Is what it is. And they're so tricky, aren't they? Because they say, oh, Charlie, you against the emancipation of slaves? Of course we're not against that.
Are you against the emancipation of slaves? Of course we are not against that. Let me keep going.
That's not what this is about. This is a summertime competitor to create multiple Independence Days to further deteriorate, erode, and destroy the celebration of our actual Independence Day.
That's history. Leave history alone.
I tweeted this out in 2021. In 2021, I tweeted out, making Juneteenth a federal holiday isn't about emancipation of slaves. If it was, they would make September 22nd, Emancipation Proclamation Day, a federal holiday. This is about replacing July 4th, just like the 1619 Project is about replacing 1776. Conservatives must reject this. So yeah, I mean, if they want to make an Emancipation Day, just make September 22nd a federal holiday.
Make September 22nd a federal holiday. You know what September 22nd is? September 22nd, 1862. President Abraham Lincoln issued a presidential order. It's called the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring slaves to be free and slavery to be illegal in the United States. as of January the 1st, 1863. And so he's saying, let's make that day, instead of trying to compete with July 4th. And basically the objective is you choose which one you want to celebrate. You want to celebrate July 4th, or you want to celebrate Juneteenth, you see, instead of July 4th. That's what they're trying to do. Leave July 4th alone. Leave July 4th out of it. It's history. July 4th is not racist. It is the development of a country, period. That's all it is. That's all it is. And I'm in complete agreement with Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk says make September 22nd a national holiday, celebrating emancipation. That shows that he is not racist, and that he does not have anything against the emancipation of slaves. So anything that says contrary is lying. Now, the next topic of discussion is Martin Luther King. All right. So did Charlie Kirk not like Martin Luther King? Well, that's not really the issue. There is an issue. There are some things that have now surfaced about Martin Luther King. And by the way, Charlie Kirk did not bring these things to the surface. The one who brought these things to the surface was Martin Luther King's assistant, the Reverend Ralph David Abernathy. Now, I remember all these people because I grew up. All these people were alive at the time when I was a kid. Okay, so I remember every one of them, and I knew what their roles were. And it is the late Reverend Ralph David Abernathy who brought these particular perspectives out. In his book, he's got a book called "And the Walls Came Tumbling Down," and he tells the truth behind the civil rights movement. It's not that the civil rights movement wasn't valid. The problem is some of the things that this particular leadership did. Let's listen.
Vince, talk about the damage, because we have to be honest, Black America is not doing well today. Talk about the damage of the welfare state and how MLK's narrative and political activism led to the modern welfare state.
Yeah, David Garrow, again, he wrote about this in his book. Patrick Moynihan wrote this great study called The Moynihan Report. It was legendary. Patrick Moynihan proved that welfare was destroying the Black family.
All right, Patrick Moynihan, he was I think he was a Democratic senator at the time, if I'm not mistaken, either senator or representative. I'm kind of short there, but he wrote this book. Basically, he was working on a project, the War on Poverty, and he talked about how that the welfare system was destroying the Black family. Okay, and so let's keep listening.
He saw that Black men were working, but the family was being more destroyed and more people were getting on welfare. And he said what's happening is these young girls that are getting pregnant aren't getting married anymore. So he told LBJ, we got to cut this out or the Black family is going to be destroyed. So he said, what we need to do is take the federal government and put the Black man back in charge of his family.
Did you hear that? Put the Black man back in charge of his family because the welfare system was destroying, messing up the Black family. I'm going to show you how and why. You have to pay attention. Now, again, this comes from, by the way, the name down there is Vince, V-I-N-C-E, Vince Everett Ellison. And he is the author of the book called Crime, Inc. Okay. And again, he is discussing the book by the Reverend Ralph David Abernathy, And the Walls Came Tumbling Down. Okay. And remember, Ralph David Abernathy is a African or was an African American minister and author. And also he was part of the Old Southern Christian Leadership Council, which was behind civil rights. Let's keep rolling.
LBJ was all for it. But LBJ.
So he brought this to the president, LBJ, that's Lyndon Baines Johnson. He brought this to President Johnson, and it says that Johnson was all for what Patrick Moynihan had brought to them. But Lyndon Baines Johnson said, here's the problem. Let's listen.
Being the politician said, you got to go and sell this to the civil rights community.
See, now, Patrick Moynihan, he's talking about how welfare is destroying the black community. So he talks to LBJ about it, that is President Johnson. President Johnson said, fine, but you have to sell this to the civil rights community. In other words, those individuals fighting for civil rights. All right, so here's what happens.
So McGeorge Bundy was over the Ford Foundation at that time. He told Moynihan that we are sponsoring a retreat for the civil rights community. Come with me down there and present your findings to them. McGeorge Bundy, Moynihan went down there, met with Martin Luther King Jr. and the members of the civil rights community. According to David Garrow, McGeorge Bundy said it's a wonder Moynihan got out of that room alive. They called him everything but a child of God, cussed him out, called him a racist. Moynihan goes back to LBJ and said, man, these people are crazy. We can't have nothing to do with them. LBJ said we got to do what they said do. They came back and met with LBJ, and the feminists in the movement said, instead of taking the federal government to put the man back in charge of his family, we need to use it to get the man out because marriage is just like slavery.
Now, did you hear that? What happened is that the feminists, the black feminists, see, I don't know what happened to them because homosexuals have taken over these people. But the black feminists said we need to get the black man out of the family because marriage is just like slavery. So they were against the idea of overcoming the welfare system, building up the man so that he can become the head of his family. They were against it. Okay, listen.
And instead of putting and fixing the welfare state where women could get welfare if they got married, they changed it to where if they caught a man in the house, she could get no help. And in one generation,
they changed it so that if they caught a man in the house and she doesn't get any help.
The black community was 80% of their children in wedlock to 80% being born out of wedlock. And they put the man in-house clause in welfare, and it destroyed the black family. And Martin Luther King Jr.'s fingerprints were all on it. And Ralph Abernathy wrote, and the walls came tumbling down.
So they basically destroyed the black community, and what he said was Martin Luther King's fingerprints was all over it. He had a part in this. Let's keep going. And then now he talks about the book, and the walls came tumbling down.
He went to the black people in the civil rights in Congress and showed them how welfare was destroying the black community, how it was keeping 3 generations of black people in poverty. And Ralph Abernathy wrote this in his book. He said, and something curious happened. It pleased them to have 2 and 3 generations of black people locked in poverty because that's how they could control them. Ralph said that,
in other words, the welfare system, the poverty system, is being used to control black people. See? And in the system, they keep you down, keep you complaining, have you blaming other people, and then they say, hey, we're going to fix it, and you keep voting for them. That's how they have you. They've got you.
they were pushing segregation because this is how they could keep all black people in the inner city and could keep their positions of power in government.
Got that? Keep all black people in the inner city, and they can keep their positions in power and in government. These are your black people. These are your black people. They figured out that power empowers them and enriches them. They got you thinking that the rich people out there are just simply out to enrich themselves. No, the political leaders are enriching themselves using you. But you haven't figured that out yet. I figured that out. I figured that out way back in 1980. You see how many years ago that is? You think about that. 1980. That's a good 40-something years ago. I figured that out. I saw it. I saw through that. And that's why I am what I am, and I say the things I say, because I saw it. He's telling you he saw it. Ralph David Abernathy saw it. Okay? And see, whenever we who saw it start talking about these things, then all the slaves in the black community calls us sellouts because they don't see what we see. Let's keep going.
And that's when Ralph Abernathy said that he supported Ronald Reagan for president in 1980.
He supported Ronald Reagan for president in 1980. And you know what? So did I. I didn't know Ralph David Abernathy supported Ronald Reagan. I'm just now finding this out right now. You know why I supported Ronald Reagan? Because he talked about getting black people off welfare. And that was when I realized that welfare was an economic trap, an economic tool, basically economic slavery being used as a tool to hold black people down. And the reason why they're trying to hold black people down is so that they can have the power block to stay in power. And when they have that voting block, BLOC, by the way, it's not BLOCK, it's BLOC. When they have that voting block to stay in power, they can be enriched. And where do you go? Nowhere. This is what Charlie Kirk was trying to reveal to you. But see, whenever white people reveal these things, for some reason, y'all think it's racist. Just like they did it with Patrick Moynihan. You see, and that's one of the problems that we have. That's one of the problems that we have. Let me, you know what? Let me finish this particular thing, because I want you to hear the rest of it.
He went to the black people in the civil rights in Congress and showed them how welfare was destroying the black community, how it was keeping 3 generations of black people in poverty. And Ralph Abernathy wrote this in his book. He said, and something curious happened. It pleased them to have 2 and 3 generations of black people locked in poverty, because that's how they could control them. Ralph said that they were pushing segregation because this is how they could keep all black people in the inner city and could keep their positions of power in government. And that's when Ralph Abernathy said that he supported Ronald Reagan for president in 1980. So it's always been part of their job to keep black people poor, ignorant, under their control, and voting for the Democrat Party. In my first book, The Iron Triangle, I said that the black preacher, the black politician, and the black civil rights worker are conduits between rich white liberals and the Democrat Party, and their job is to do one thing: make sure that the black community votes for the Democratic Party by hook or by crook. And they've been doing it well for the last 40, 50 years.
Okay, so now, if you can pay attention to what he said, that's the problem. That's where Charlie Kirk stood, where MLK is concerned. Because at this point, in listening to this individual, you know what? He realizes MLK didn't do everything that he believed in. The Civil Rights Act was passed. All right. But, you know, MLK had his problems. Besides, and then there are the, from what we understand, from what I've heard, the alleged orgies and prostitutes that were being used. And, you know, a lot of things are starting to make more sense now. That's all. He's not against Martin Luther King. or against the things that he did. What he's looking at are some of the things behind the scenes that were that did not seem appropriate for a man who was supposed to be a man of God. Let's move on to this final clip here. And I want you to hear this. This clip, this is about the Civil Rights Act. Did Charlie hate the Civil Rights Act? That is the question. Let's see if he did or not.
This is what Charlie Kirk had to say about the Civil Rights Act.
If you had the opportunity, you would get rid of the Civil Rights Act?
No, I think you should have a one-page bill that racial discrimination.
Okay. If you had the chance, would you get rid of the Civil Rights Act? No. I think you should have a one-page bill. Let me keep it going.
Based on race is illegal and will not be tolerated in the United States of America. Most black Americans don't support is men and female sports. Would you agree?
Most black Americans don't support men in female sports. Do you agree? And his answer was, and I'm breaking it up, I'm going to let it play through again so you can hear it. But I want you to hear this, because this is what the Civil Rights Act has done.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. No, for sure, right? Believe it or not, the Civil Rights Act is now being used to keep men playing in women's sports. So the Civil Rights Act was used to help black America originally. Totally get that. But now the way it was written is that any claim of identification, so someone says, I'm a woman, therefore I can compete in your volleyball team.
See? You see what this is what he's against. He's not against the Civil Rights Act to help blacks and to prevent discrimination and oppression. He's not against that. Okay? He's against this, which I am 100% with him on. Men playing in women's sport, men using women's restrooms. You see, that's what he's against. And that's what the Civil Rights Act led to. That's why the Civil Rights Act is a bad document. And by the way, guess what? I came to this conclusion back at the turn of the century. That's right. In the late 90s and the turn of the century, I realized that the Civil Rights Act created this thing that the LGBTQ, they weren't called that at the time, they were riding the coattails of our experience and equating their immorality with our experience against discrimination and segregation. And I saw that back in the late 90s and 2000, and I expressed that. I expressed that then. And Charlie Kirk was just a little boy. I expressed that then. This is not hard to see if you're a godly person. Okay? All right, let me keep on.
They come in with a civil rights claim. And so what we're saying is, no, it should be specified to racial, not gender, all that other stuff. And there were all these other provisions as well.
Now, do you get it? He was not trying to say that blacks should lose their rights and equal protections under the law. He was saying that homosexuals, the LGBTQIA plus and counting community, there's 72 genders in counting. He was saying that those individuals should not have special rights. We should have equal rights under the law, but not special.
I'm going to let this play.
This is what Charlie Kirk had to say about the Civil Rights Act.
If you had the opportunity, you would get rid of the Civil Rights Act?
No, I think you should have a one-page bill that says that racial discrimination based on race is illegal and will not be tolerated in the United States of America. Most black Americans don't support is men and female sports. Would you agree?
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. No, for sure, right? Believe it or not, the Civil Rights Act is now being used to keep men playing in women's sports. So the Civil Rights Act was used to help black America originally. Totally get that. But now the way it was written is that any claim of identification, so someone says, I'm a woman, therefore I can compete in your volleyball team, they come in with a civil rights claim. And so what we're saying is, no, it should be specified to racial, not gender, all that other stuff. And there were all these other provisions as well.
Now, do you get it? He was not trying to say that blacks should lose their rights and equal protections under the law. He was saying that homosexuals, the LGBTQIA plus and counting community, there's 72 genders in counting. He was saying that those individuals should not have special rights. We should have equal rights under the law, but not special rights.
See, and that's exactly what happens when you have a document like the Civil Rights Act. So you have homosexuals having special rights. Look, we went up, when was that? In the early 2000s, or in the late 90s, I think it was in the late 90s. We went up to the Louisiana State Legislature and fought against adding the little clause, because they ended up doing it anyway. But we fought against it successfully that year to keep them from throwing in the word sexual orientation. Because what it does, again, it gives them special rights simply because of their proclivities. And we fought against that. There was a group of us that went up and fought against that. You see, because you don't want people everybody has civil rights under the Constitution. We don't want to give a special interest group special rights, even over and above everyone else, because that's unfair. Let me give you a case in point. You do know that a lot of the homosexual people are white, right? Aren't they white? So aren't you giving them special? Now, you all claim that these people are born privileged because they're white. Okay? Don't you say that? So then if you give them another set of rights on top of that because they're gay, see, I'm going by what you say. Okay? So if you give them another special rights on top of that because they're gay, how does that help you? Do you understand? That's the problem. What he said was, all you needed was one page that said discrimination based on race will be illegal in the United States and unacceptable. Period. That's all you needed. But the way the Civil Rights Bill is written, it allows for every special interest group. This is why you have men competing against women. This is why you have men wanting to use women's restrooms. Okay? Imagine a grown man going into a restroom and there are little girls in there, 8, 9, and 10 years old, taking care of their business. And now you've got grown men who can legally go into a woman's restroom. All he has to say is, I'm a woman. And then that's it. You see? Matter of fact, he can say, I'm a woman. Beard, everything. I'm a woman. And you, under the current civil rights bill, you see, this is why we're having trouble. It's because of that. See? So we've lost our sense of morality in this country. And that's the problem. And now you've got bills and documents that aid and assist in this loss of morality. Do you get it? That's what Charlie Kirk was against. This is the truth about Charlie Kirk. The man's not racist. The man is righteous. God bless you.